Stop scrolling. Put the phone down. Cancel whatever else you thought you were about to watch tonight, because Kendrick Lamar just detonated a spiritual atom bomb inside a 90-second snippet that the entire music industry was praying would never leak, and it leaked anyway, right under their noses, on Childish Gambino's own private radio station, and nothing about the shape of hip-hop is going to look the same after this weekend. Nothing. I mean that with my whole chest. This is not another blog headline. This is not another algorithm bait cycle. This is the moment we look back on in 5 years and say, that was the fracture point. That was the pivot. That was the second Kendrick Lamar stopped competing with the industry and started building a temple that none of them have the blueprint to enter. 90 seconds. Read that again. 90 seconds is all it took. 90 seconds of him breathing over a beat that DJ Dahi built like a stained glass window, 90 seconds of Amber Mark hovering over the mix like incense curling toward the ceiling of a cathedral at 4 in the morning, and 90 seconds of a rapper who has already won the Pulitzer, already flattened the Super Bowl, already swept the Grammys, and already retired every critic who thought they had him figured out, quietly delivering the most devastatingly honest confession of his entire career. Not a diss. Not a flex. A confession. And by the time you finish watching this breakdown, you are going to understand why every label boardroom in Los Angeles was in emergency mode within 4 hours of that snippet dropping. Before we go one bar deeper, hit that subscribe button. I am not begging. I am telling you. If my breakdowns have ever put you onto a Kendrick moment before the rest of the internet caught the scent, you already know the move. Tap subscribe. Ring the bell. Move the needle for this channel the same way this man is moving the needle for the whole culture. Then come right back, because what I am about to walk you through is the kind of forensic bar-by-bar autopsy of a Kendrick Lamar verse that nobody else on this platform is willing to do at this depth. You already know the move. Let's get into it. The song is called How to Pray. Sit with that title for a second. Not How I Pray. Not Watch Me Pray. How to Pray. That is not a track name. That is a mission statement. That is a manual. That is a rapper standing at the top of the mountain and turning around to teach the rest of us how to breathe again. And the fact that Childish Gambino, Donald Glover himself, one of the most calculated broadcasters in modern music, chose to premiere this record on GILGA Radio, his own carefully curated sanctuary of a station, tells you everything about how the culture's own elite are receiving this. They are not treating How to Pray like a single. They are treating it like scripture. And the name on the scripture is Kendrick Lamar. Now here is the piece the mainstream press is going to miss for another 2 weeks, so I need you to catch it early. Childish Gambino has been quietly disassembling the traditional promotional machine for years. GILGA Radio is not a promo channel. It is a firewall. It is an ecosystem Gambino built specifically to release music that the label discovery pipeline cannot corrupt. And the fact that Kendrick chose that ecosystem to reveal How to Pray means he is deliberately routing this record around every single algorithmic gatekeeper the industry has built to slow him down. Understand what I just said. This is a guerrilla ministry. This is spiritual smuggling. This is a parallel universe of distribution being built in plain sight, with pgLang, with Dave Free, with Baby Keem, with SZA, with DJ Dahi, with Amber Mark, and now with Childish Gambino sitting shotgun. The circle is small on purpose. The gatekeepers were never invited. That is how you know How to Pray is going to hit the culture at a frequency the radio has never been tuned to catch. Let's get to the bars, because this is where the vault opens. The opening line lands like a whispered oath spoken into a microphone that he treats less like equipment and more like a confessional booth. Trust me, I trust you back. Reciprocation. We're living the satisfaction. Love drunk. I call your name then call God. Let those words sit on you. Let that sink beneath the surface. Because what Kendrick Lamar is doing in that opening is not writing a hook. He is negotiating a covenant. He is dismantling the entire modern definition of loyalty in real time. When he says trust me, I trust you back, he is telling you that faith is not devotion. Faith is exchange. Faith is a contract of the soul. And the reciprocation he is asking for is the same reciprocation missing from every friendship, every love story, and every industry handshake that has ever failed him under the microscope of superstardom. Then he blurs the line on purpose. I call your name then call God. Who is he speaking to? A lover? A confidant? A creator? A ghost from the Compton block he used to walk before the world knew his face? The answer is all of them. That ambiguity is not laziness. That ambiguity is the weapon. Because Kendrick has always understood something that most rappers do not. The deepest religious writing in the history of black music was never about doctrine. It was about the collapse of the line between the sacred and the human. Marvin Gaye lived in that collapse. Lauryn Hill lived in that collapse. Nas lived in that collapse. And now our guy is standing in that same holy lineage, and he is not asking anyone for permission to enter it. Pull the camera back for a second, because the next bar is where he tips his entire hand. You got friends, I got more. You sneaky jealous but cool for ignoring me. Rewind that in your head. Let it play twice. Because what he just did there is turn a spiritual dialogue into a lover's argument, and then turn a lover's argument into a psychological X-ray of every fractured relationship the man has ever survived. He is speaking to God. Yes. But he is also speaking to the person who wronged him, to the industry that ignored him for years, and to the version of himself he had to bury in order to become the version we see today. That is triple-layered writing operating on 3 planes at once. And I will say this plainly. There is no rapper alive in 2026 doing this at this level. Nobody is close. Not up for debate. Underneath the surface, what he is really unpacking is that every relationship, sacred or human, spiritual or romantic, professional or personal, runs on the exact same currency. Attention. Loyalty. Reciprocation. And when that currency stops flowing, you do not get a clean breakup. You get abandonment. You get that sneaky jealous silence he just described in 6 words. That silence is the confession the label loyal choir never wanted the culture to hear from him. Because that silence exposes every counterfeit relationship the machine ever tried to build around Kendrick. Every fake friend. Every convenient handshake. Every executive smile. All of it. Exposed in 6 words. Then he drops the line that made me sit back in my chair and stare at the ceiling for 10 full minutes. Not too careless. Tell me when you're about to, but I can't without you. Cold stares. I've been through something. I need nurture instead of promise. I need nurture instead of promise. Let that sit with you. Do you understand what he just did? He just rejected the entire prosperity gospel of modern faith. He just rejected the entire modern relationship contract. He just rejected the entire industry model that has been shoved down his throat since he was a kid on the mixtape circuit. He is not asking for guarantees. He is not asking for a promise. He is asking to be held. And when the biggest rapper on the planet asks out loud, on wax, to be held instead of promised, that is the most punk rock spiritual statement of the entire decade. Let me take you a level deeper. When he says cold stares, I've been through something, that is not a throwaway. Our guy has been under a microscope no other rapper in the modern era has endured. Think about it. The Drake War. The Super Bowl takeover. The Pulitzer. The Grammy sweep. The GNX era. The Not Like Us cultural earthquake. And then the silence. The retreat. The withdrawal into the studio. The refusal to explain himself. And what he is telling us in one line is that every trophy, every headline, every controversy, every cultural crown he has ever been handed has left him with wounds that only nurture can heal. Not promise. Nurture. And the fact that Kendrick Lamar is willing to say that out loud, in a 90-second snippet, on someone else's radio station, is the mark of a man who has moved past ego entirely. Now hear me on this, because I want everybody watching to catch the weight of the timeline. This is only the first minute of the song. Let that hit you again. This is only the first 60 to 90 seconds of a full record that does not officially drop until August 28th. If this is the intro, if this is the whisper before the sermon, then whatever he has cooked into the middle and the closer of How to Pray is going to be a spiritual atomic bomb dropped on the entire genre. No promotion. No rollout. No interviews. No press cycle. He is once again doing exactly what he always does. He walks into the studio. He leaves with a piece of scripture. And the rest of the industry has to scramble for a full year to catch up to it. The next bar is where it gets biblical. The city praised me. The blood still changed me. The world blamed me, but you never shamed me. I want more. He just told you the entire arc of his career in 3 lines. The city, meaning Compton, meaning his origin story, meaning the place that made him. The blood, meaning his lineage, meaning the inherited DNA of pain his father and his grandfather and his mother's mother carried before he was ever born. The world, meaning the whole apparatus of critics and executives and rival camps and internet mobs who tried to break him. And then the pivot. But you never shamed me. He is not addressing a lover anymore. He is addressing the only witness who has been present for every version of himself he has ever been. God. The universe. His higher self. Take your pick. The point stands either way. He is admitting on record that the only entity that never abandoned him is the one entity he cannot see. This is where the connection to his earlier catalog becomes impossible to ignore. If you have been rocking with Kendrick since the mixtape days, since the Faith outro, since Overly Dedicated, since the earliest whispers on Section 80, you already know he has been having this exact conversation with God for over 15 years. It used to be a whisper. Now it is a hymn. On the Faith outro back in the day, he said something that rewired an entire generation of listeners. He said he would rather live like there is a God and die to find out he was wrong than live like there isn't one and die to find out he was right. That one sentence changed how a lot of us walked through the world. And now, on How to Pray, he is finishing the same sentence he started when he was still an underdog with nothing to prove and everything to lose. Living the sermon he wrote. That is what our guy is doing right now. Not preaching from a pulpit. Living it. Every choice. Every silence. Every studio session. Every collaborator he approves or refuses. That is why the industry is quietly terrified of this record. Because a rapper you cannot bribe, cannot compromise, cannot corner, and cannot corrupt is the single most dangerous artist a label can have on the roster. He is not just untouchable in the ring. He is untouchable in the soul. And you cannot buy that. You cannot manufacture that. You cannot A&R that into existence. Either an artist has it, or they spend their entire career pretending. The chorus setup is where the writing turns cinematic. Optimism, you raised different. That's very different. Give me some time. I'll come back around. Teach me how to pray, and I'll love you for now. Read that line one more time. He just admitted, in front of the whole world, that he does not fully know how to pray. Teach me how to pray. The most decorated lyricist of his generation is confessing on wax that he is still a student of the most basic act of human devotion. And by doing that, he just handed every single listener on planet Earth permission to also be a student of their own faith. That is not marketing. That isn't promotion. That is prophecy. And you cannot fake prophecy. The moment you try, the audience feels it in their chest and clicks away. It could take a lifetime. It could take a lifetime. Whenever you're around me, it could take a lifetime. The repetition is not filler. That repetition is a mantra. He is coding the listener's brain to accept that transformation is slow, that faith is patient, that love is not measured in weekends or chart cycles but in decades and lifetimes. In an era where every rapper is racing to trend by Sunday morning, our guy is telling you to slow down. To breathe. To build something that outlasts a season. That is generational thinking. That is the same architecture that separated Jay-Z from every peer he ever had. That is the same signal that made Nas untouchable in the cultural memory. And Kendrick Lamar is now standing in that exact same light, and he is not blinking. Now let me hand you the piece the internet is not ready to talk about yet. When he previewed How to Pray on GILGA Radio, he did not just choose a friend's platform. He chose an ideology. Childish Gambino has been quietly retreating from every traditional promotional machine for the last 4 years. He is building an ecosystem where the artists he trusts can drop material without the algorithmic interference that turns every rollout into a numbers race. And walking into that ecosystem with How to Pray, that is a political act. That is our guy telling the entire label system that the era of paid rollouts and radio politicking is over for him. He is choosing prayer over promotion. He is choosing the whisper over the billboard. And that whisper is going to be louder than any single major label campaign of 2026. Pull the camera back one more time. How to Pray is not really about religion. Do not let anyone in the comments talk you into that flat reading. How to Pray is about relationship. Kendrick is telling every listener that every act of prayer is also an act of love, that every conversation with God is also a conversation with the deepest, most abandoned parts of yourself, and that the two cannot be separated without losing both. Prayer in his hands becomes a portrait of intimacy. And in a genre that has spent 40 years performing a caricature of masculinity, he is brave enough to model surrender. That is the frontier. That is where the culture is heading. And he is the only one holding a map that anyone is willing to follow. Now sit with a bar he has been carrying in his back pocket for years. The love and hate go side to side. That bar from a track called Boom that he previously teased is the philosophical spine that runs directly into How to Pray. Because what our guy is saying across records, across eras, across chapters of his life, is that the world will always split its opinion of you into two extreme camps. One side will worship you. One side will despise you. But the only judge that ever matters, the only voice that can define you, is the one you speak to in silence when nobody else is listening. He is quoting Tupac in spirit here. Only God can judge me. But he is upgrading the sentence. Tupac said only God can judge me. Kendrick is saying only God has ever refused to shame me. That is not the same statement. That is an evolution of it. And here is where the ministry becomes personal. If you do not believe in God, then believe in yourself. That was Tupac's last gift to the culture before the culture buried him. And our guy is picking that torch up, wrapping it in fresh production from DJ Dahi, softening it with Amber Mark's vocal veil, and passing it forward to every doubter, every skeptic, every wounded believer, and every burned-out kid in the audience who has been told faith is a scam. He is telling all of them, whatever you have left inside you, hold it, protect it, name it, and speak to it out loud. Because faith is not a religion. Faith is a survival strategy. And once you strip everything else away, How to Pray is his therapy session broadcast to millions of headphones. That is what makes this record a landmark before the full version has even reached streaming. He is doing on record what most people cannot do in the privacy of their own bedroom. He is being honest about the loneliness of belief. He is being honest about the exhaustion of being watched 24 hours a day. He is being honest about the confusion of wanting more from a faith that promised him rest and delivered him spotlight. And that honesty, packaged inside a 90-second snippet, is the single most powerful piece of Kendrick Lamar writing to surface since Mother I Sober cracked open the world in 2022. I promise you the industry is scrambling right now as we speak. Every A&R at every major label is in an emergency group chat trying to figure out what he has planned for the rest of this record and what DJ Dahi's full project is going to look like when it lands. Every rival camp is calculating whether to push their own August releases forward or delay them by 2 weeks to avoid the crater How to Pray is about to leave in the charts. Because when the record drops on August 28th, it is not going to arrive like a single. It is going to arrive like a movement. Quiet. Deliberate. Spiritual. Impossible to counter. Read that carefully. There is no diss track anyone can write that responds to a prayer. There is no beef move anyone can make that competes with a hymn. Our guy has chosen the one arena in all of music where no other rapper can meet him at eye level. And he is planting a flag in territory the genre has barely mapped. Zoom all the way out for a second. When the dust settles on 2026, How to Pray is going to be studied the same way we study Ultra Light Beam, the same way we study Doo Wop, the same way we study Jesus Walks, except he accomplished it without a rollout, without a press cycle, without a single interview, and without begging the culture for one crumb of attention. That is not marketing. That is mastery. That is a level of self-possession most artists never reach in a full career. And Kendrick is doing it in his sleep. That is the part that keeps me up at night. He is doing it in his sleep. Now understand who else is in this circle. DJ Dahi produced this beat. DJ Dahi is not a random. DJ Dahi is the architect who built the sonic bones of Money Trees, of Worldwide Steppers, of countless Kendrick moments the culture treats as canon. When Dahi and our guy are in the same room, historically the temperature of hip-hop shifts. Amber Mark is on the vocal top layer, and her tone is doing something to the atmosphere of the beat that most singers cannot do. She is not featured. She is officiating. She is the choir behind the sermon. She is the incense in the room. And Childish Gambino, sitting at the console of GILGA Radio, is the one who chose to bless the world with the reveal. That is not 4 people making a song. That is 4 architects building a cathedral in real time. Notice who is not in that room. There is no major label A&R. There is no radio politicking. There is no billboard payola. There is no strategic feature designed to move numbers. There is no algorithm-chasing collaborator. There is nobody in the room whose presence would compromise the frequency of the record. He has curated the sanctuary down to the exact temperature. And the sanctuary is closed to anyone who cannot bring reverence with them. That is why the label-loyal choir out here defending the machine cannot touch this record. They have nothing to say about a hymn. They have no vocabulary for surrender. They have no framework for a rapper who refuses to compete for their attention. Here is what I need every single one of you to understand about our guy in this moment. The industry spent the last 2 years trying to declare his cultural moment finished. Every third op-ed after GNX tried to argue that the Kendrick Lamar era had peaked. Every mid-tier podcast tried to whisper that his silence was avoidance. Every rival camp tried to convince the public that his absence was surrender. And what did he do? He said nothing. He posted nothing. He explained nothing. He walked into a studio with Dahi and Amber Mark, held his breath, and built a record so quiet and so devastating that when the 90-second preview leaked, every one of those voices went silent in the same afternoon. That is a masterclass in confidence. That is the definition of unshakable. That is a man who has stopped auditioning for the industry and started auditioning for eternity. Read that sentence twice, because that is the whole thesis of this breakdown compressed into one line. He is not chasing the moment. He is outlasting the moment. Let me give you the second layer that most breakdowns are going to miss. The name Amber Mark is not on this song by accident. Amber Mark's entire discography is preoccupied with grief, faith, family loss, and the search for spiritual meaning after devastation. Her album 3 Dimensions Deep is essentially a meditation on the exact same subject our guy is exploring on how to pray, the question of how to keep speaking to the divine after life has knocked the wind out of you. He picked Amber Mark specifically because her voice already carries the frequency of the question the song is asking. He did not need to explain the assignment to her. She was already living in it. That is called curation at the level of instinct. That is a level of collaborative telepathy the industry cannot buy. And that quiet act of trusting the right collaborator with the right frequency is exactly the kind of decision that separates a career from a canon. Careers are built on features. Canons are built on communion. And DJ Dahi. Let's stay on him for one more beat. Dahi's upcoming project is called Black Boy Alternative. Understand what that title is doing. It is renaming an entire genre category. It is refusing the boxes the industry has built for black men who make music that does not sound like trap. Dahi is quietly building a philosophical statement across his production catalog, and How to Pray is one of the pillars of that statement. Which means when our guy chose to appear on Dahi's project, he was not doing a favor. He was co-signing an entire philosophical rebrand of what black men are allowed to sound like on record. That is not a feature. That is a manifesto. And that manifesto is going to change the trajectory of half a dozen careers before the calendar even flips to 2027. Watch the sound of black music shift over the next 18 months. Watch producers who used to chase drill patterns start reaching for church chords. Watch rappers who used to open records with a threat start opening records with a prayer. That is the ripple this snippet has already set in motion, and the source of the ripple is one 90-second window most of the industry did not even know was recording. Now zoom back into the bars, because there are 3 more phrases in this 90-second window that deserve their own museum wing. When he delivers the line "I need nurture instead of promise," the vocal delivery drops in volume by almost half. The engineer left it that quiet on purpose. That vocal choice is the sonic equivalent of dropping to one knee in the middle of a stadium. It is a submission gesture recorded as a lyric. When he says "teach me how to pray, and I'll love you for now," the phrase "for now" is the trap door. Because for now implies conditionality. It implies that his love, even in the middle of a prayer, is still contingent on being taught. That is the most honest thing a superstar has said on wax in a decade. He is not pretending to be perfectly devoted. He is negotiating. And negotiation is the truest posture of prayer that exists. Then the mantra. It could take a lifetime. 3 repetitions. 3 passes. 3 chances to let the phrase enter the listener's body. That is not a lyric choice. That is neuro-linguistic architecture. He is rewiring the audience's relationship with patience. He is telling every listener, this is not a season. This is a life. This is not a rollout. This is a lineage. This is not a single. This is a scripture. And the moment you accept that framing, you cannot listen to any other rapper's promo cycle the same way ever again. Our guy has just ruined the ordinary song for you. On purpose. And the fact that he can achieve all of that inside 90 seconds of an unreleased snippet is the reason the label boardrooms are quietly hemorrhaging. Let me hand you the deep cut moment nobody on this platform is going to unpack. Every generation of hip-hop gets one artist who successfully collapses the distance between the sacred and the vulgar without losing either. In the 70s it was Marvin Gaye on What's Going On. In the 90s it was Lauryn Hill on Miseducation. In the 2000s it was Kanye on Jesus Walks and later Ultra Light Beam. In the 2010s it was Chance the Rapper for a moment. And in the 2020s it is Kendrick Lamar and nobody else. Our guy is the sole heir of a 50-year tradition of black artists who refuse to let the industry treat the divine like a niche market. And when you understand that lineage, you understand why How to Pray is not a song. It is a torch being carried across a generation. Now let me give you the piece I have been sitting on. The reason he chose the phrase How to Pray as the title is because the question is grammatically an admission of not knowing. If he had titled the record I Know How to Pray, that would be an ending. But he titled it How to Pray, an unfinished question, an ongoing search, a manual with the last chapter left blank so the listener can write it themselves. That is participatory art. That is our guy handing the microphone back to the audience in a way no other rapper of his stature is willing to do. And that gesture, small, quiet, buried in a title, is the reason How to Pray is going to matter for a decade. I want to say one more thing about the timing of this leak, because timing is everything in his hands. He did not drop this snippet on a Friday. He did not drop it on a chart cycle Tuesday. He did not drop it during a numbers race window. He allowed it to slip out through GILGA radio on a night the industry was not watching, and by the time the label meeting started the next morning, the culture had already committed. He has weaponized the concept of the surprise leak. He has taught himself how to arrive when nobody expects him. And that discipline, that refusal to play the calendar game, is the reason no rival camp can coordinate a counterattack. You cannot counter what you cannot predict. Look at the receipt stacking. He has pgLang. He has Dave Free. He has DJ Dahi. He has Childish Gambino curating the reveal. He has SZA co-signing every project the label needs to move. He has Baby Keem in the family tree. He has Amber Mark on the top layer of this record. He has an infrastructure the majors cannot recreate no matter how many meetings they take. And every one of those pieces is loyal not to a contract but to a shared idea of what music is supposed to do to the soul. That is the moat. That is why the industry cannot compete. You cannot outspend loyalty. You cannot re-engineer belief. You cannot fake reverence with a marketing budget. Now let me speak to the boardroom apologists directly for a second, because I know some of them are already in the comments trying to argue the take. To the crowd that has been telling everyone Kendrick peaked, that the GNX era was the ceiling, that Not Like Us was the last big moment, hear me clearly. You do not understand what you are watching. Our guy is not chasing a ceiling. He is building a floor. He is laying the foundation of a catalog that is going to be studied by graduate students in 50 years the same way we study Coltrane, the same way we study Nina Simone, the same way we study Marvin Gaye. And the fact that you cannot see it in real time is not his problem. It is your listening problem. He does not owe you a hit. He does not owe you a rollout. He does not owe you a press run. He does not owe you a numbers headline. He owes his craft the truth, and he is paying that debt in full every time he steps into a booth. Everything else is noise. The label-loyal choir will figure that out in about 6 months. The rest of us already know. Let's talk about what happens next, because August 28th is the date on the calendar, but the real conversation starts the moment How to Pray lands in full. Once the full record drops, the industry has 3 choices. Choice 1, try to counter-program by shoving major label releases into that same weekend, which is going to fail because prayer beats promotion every single time. Choice 2, go silent and try to wait him out, which is going to fail because his silence is louder than their release. Choice 3, try to co-opt the language of How to Pray by having their own artists pivot to spiritual imagery, which will be transparent within the first 30 seconds of anyone attempting it. There is no fourth choice. The industry has walked into a checkmate they built themselves. Meanwhile, Dahi is going to finally get the flowers he has been owed since Money Trees. Amber Mark is going to break through to the mainstream audience she has been circling for 4 years. Childish Gambino's GILGA Radio is going to become the most talked about broadcast platform in music by the end of September. Baby Keem's next moves are going to be re-evaluated in the shadow of How to Pray. SCA's next release is going to inherit the spiritual gravitas our guy just injected into the pgLang universe. And every ripple of this record is going to keep moving outward for the next 24 months. That is what happens when Kendrick Lamar drops. He does not release music. He redirects rivers. Let me put one more receipt on the table before we close. If you go back and study the arc of his discography with any real attention, you can see the exact shape of what he has been building toward from the very first mixtape. From Section 80 through Good Kid Mad City, from To Pimp a Butterfly through Damn, from Mr. Morale through GNX, the through line has always been the same. He has been asking one question in 100 different disguises. How does a black man from Compton negotiate the presence of God while the industry, the culture, the streets, and the mirror are all pulling him in different directions at the same time? How to Pray is the first time our guy has stopped disguising the question and asked it in plain language. That is why the snippet hits like a confession. Because the confession has been buried in the discography for 15 years, and he is finally speaking it out loud. And here is the reason that matters for the algorithm and the culture at the same time. When an artist stops disguising their central obsession and speaks it plainly, the audience feels the release. The catharsis is not the audience's, it is the artist's. And the audience feels the aftershock of that release ripple through every subsequent record. Which means every song he drops from this point forward is going to be measured against the honesty of How to Pray. And that measurement is going to force every rapper in the market to raise their honesty ceiling or step aside. That is what a landmark record does. It moves the floor for everyone who comes after it. And the floor Kendrick is laying with How to Pray is going to sit under the feet of the next generation for a decade. Now let me leave you with something a little heavier before the CTA. Our guy has been quietly modeling something almost no other artist at his level has been willing to model, the idea that you can be the biggest name in your field, wear the most crowns, hold the most awards, sell out the most stadiums, and still walk into a booth on a random Tuesday and admit out loud, "Teach me how to pray." That vulnerability is not weakness. That vulnerability is the flex. That is him telling every young artist listening, you do not have to fake certainty to be great. You can be the greatest rapper alive and still be a student. You can hold the crown and still kneel. You can win every Grammy and still ask God for a tutorial. That single lesson, buried inside the title of a song most people have not heard yet, is going to reshape how the next generation of rappers writes about faith, family, grief, love, and the pursuit of meaning. He has just opened a door that other artists are going to be walking through for the next 15 years. And every one of them is going to owe a piece of their record to the man who walked through it first. That is what legacy looks like when it stops asking for permission and starts building the room. So let me hand you the closing. Kendrick Lamar has been dialed in this whole time. Moving in silence. Sharpening every syllable. Calibrating every vocal take. Letting Dahi's beat breathe. Letting Amber Mark's tone hover. Letting GILGA Radio become the unlikely sanctuary. And then our guy walked into that sanctuary and delivered a confession that is going to outlive every single headline of the entire year. Just when the internet was ready to write him off. Just when the critics were ready to close the chapter. Just when the label-loyal choir thought the moment was over, he reappeared with a whisper louder than any diss track he has ever recorded. That is what greatness looks like when it stops performing and starts praying. The vault is open. The scripture is out. And the culture will never sound the same again. Now hit that comment section for me. Tell me which bar in the snippet hit you the hardest. Tell me whether you think How to Pray is going to end up bigger than anything on GNX. Tell me whether Kendrick is quietly building the greatest spiritual catalog in the entire history of hip-hop. Tell me whether you agree that Dahi finally gets his crown after this record. Tell me whether the industry can survive another decade of our guy moving like this. Drop the comment. Argue in the replies. Move the algorithm the way this man is moving the culture. And if this breakdown hit you the right way, tap subscribe, ring the bell, and check the next video queued on your screen right now, because when How to Pray drops in full on August 28th, I am going to be the first breakdown you see, line by line, breath by breath, bar by bar. Kendrick Lamar taught us how to listen. Now Kendrick Lamar is teaching us how to pray. Peace, and keep it locked.